I am Stefaan de Wildeman and I will go a little wild about plastics. I will try to tell you what is wrong with plastics in our lives today. So that is coming down to three main questions for me. Where do the plastics that we use come from? Actually, what are they? And finally, where are they going to after we have consumed them? That's what I will spend about 2 slides on each of those three questions. So first of all, where do our plastics come from? Well, as a matter of fact, living in 2016, 99+% of all our plastics are fossil-based. That means that they are made from coal, oil or gas, and potentially even not so known, they also have traveled a lot before they reach us. So they come from very far. There's an amazing global logistics behind our 300+ million tons of plastics that we consume as humanity every year. That being said, the awareness of the plastics that we all use is completely underdeveloped. It's what I would call plastic fantastic, but nothing more than that. Because of all the kilograms of plastic we use, there's hardly 1 second we think about them. If I would ask you how many kilograms of plastic you use per year per capita as a person, hardly anybody can answer that question. It's about 250 kilograms of plastic, partially hidden, but also partially not hidden. If you throw away every day part of your food containers and other plastic stuff in the bin, that's of course the seconds on the day that you say, whoa, it's again some plastic that I'm moving into the bin. Apart from not being aware of it, if we are aware of our plastic consumption, it's more about that they are bad for us. There's a kind of a perception that they are made in chemical industry, and chemical industry might not be the best environment you can live in, so to say. And that's why all plastics are bad for you is the only spontaneous perception you see with people that use plastic if you start to ask about their perceptions they have. That's the second theme. Now I move to a third theme, and that's the theme, what happens with plastics after they are consumed. And actually it's a quite recent science that is coming up, a branch in science that is focusing on the phenomenon of microplastics. I was 2 years ago in Cologne at the first worldwide symposium of microplastics with the subtitle "Plastics are everywhere." And it becomes apparent that indeed they are everywhere. And why is that? Because a lot of plastics are ending in our oceans or ending up in our environment. We hardly see that, but as a matter of fact, even today, before you and me go to bed, there will be 30 kilotons of plastics spoiled again in our oceans. I did not calculate how many houses that are, but I think many of you can imagine what 30 kilotons mean. It's a 30,000 cubic meter about of plastics that are being thrown in our oceans. You can say that's a lot, and actually it's also not a lot, because of the 300 million tons of plastics we consume every year, it's only about 3% of them that are ending up in oceans. But of course it's considerable. And as you can see here, the birds that are eating from our ocean wildlife are one of the victims of that phenomenon. It's going further than that. The science is moving into the direction of modeling and predicting how plastic soups on our planet will move on in the coming years. So that is what is written here. We have about 5 soups now in 2016. And the movement of the soups is being studied by people. So it's a known phenomenon that the plastics are agglomerated and that they are slightly moving and growing around our globe. So 3 questions that make it very apparent how unaware we are is the first question that I had already earlier in the presentation. How many kilograms of plastics do you use every year? The answer to that is about 250 kilograms. A second question is how many kilograms of plastics are in your car? Many of us are riding cars. We buy them for 10, 20, 50,000 euro or more, but there is not any question that is related to the kilograms of the plastics and the choice of those plastics in your car. I will give you the answer. In average, this is going from 3 to 400 kilograms of very specialized, very diversified plastics in your car. I think hardly any one of us ever thinks about it, but there's a whole industrial chain to manage that, of course. At the stage of the end consumer, it's not lived up. A third question, and that comes back to the logistics item I've touched in my second slide. How many kilometers did plastics travel before reaching you, before you can consume it? And as I have documented, there's a global logistics in our current plastics industry, and the average kilometers that have been traveled have never been determined properly. I have a colleague at Maastricht University that is especially studying on sustainability measurements, and that is closely related to what Yvonne van der Meer is studying a lot. But actually the answer here to this question is that we have in average, and I take here a little bottle that I just finished, so to document what is happening, the carbon in this bottle has traveled at least like a 5,000 kilometer. Why is that? Because it's fossil based, and it means that this is based on oil, coal or gas, somewhere harvested from the underground. It has been processed around the world somewhere. We don't have a guarantee that this is per se done in Europe. It might have been done in Asia or in USA. And then it has traveled all the way towards my use. I think I did not count, but in 15 minutes this has been consumed by myself. So those three questions document our very loose involvement in the massive consumption of the plastics that we use every day. So as a conclusion, in the middle of this presentation, I can say that we, end consumers, you and me, we are hardly educated to consume plastics more ecologically. We are even not aware of. So how could we be in charge? How could we become responsible to know how we can use them? And which is potentially even worse, we end consumers are hardly offered any eco-alternative. If we are offered eco-alternatives, there's of course also very loose claims in the market. There's a lot of bio around us, a lot of eco around us, but we as end consumers are not given the proper tools to be in control of what we consume. So now I come to a role of University Maastricht, and the question is very relevant: how can a university in fact help to live better plastic lives? Well, three facts that I want to propose to you today. First of all, what we are doing within the group of bio-based materials on a historical chemical site here on Brightlands Camelot campus is the development of novel plastic types. By understanding what plastic is today and by understanding how you can design them in a better way to be used and to be captured by end consumers in a much better way, you can design your materials in such a way that they live a more ecological life in our plastic lives. So secondly, if you have succeeded in designing some plastics that are more fit for a sustainable world, you have to offer them as a university, or you have to cooperate to partner with companies, and often the established big companies with invested assets are not fully ready yet to pick up little promising plastics inventions. So that's why within brackets I put it also here, startup companies. I think we come into an area where we have to found much swifter than before, and that's of course what you see around the world, startup companies. So entrepreneurial people that have a vision in their mind about a certain plastic line and that only can live up that vision into reality by just starting today, doing today, and getting the balls in rolling speed to be later picked up potentially by very big companies that have operational excellence, that are already in several markets and that can boost the business until it becomes socially completely embedded. Last but not least, as you see that I do today with you, it's also about telling about them. Because plastics, it's hardly being told about. On the family table, at home and also at work, once again, we are using our plastics without spending one word about them. So of course here at Brightlands Camelot campus, we are at a very good spot to make such things happen. As you can see, the site has been historically created exactly 100 years before 2002 by DSM, Dutch States Mines, which, as a matter of fact, here in the environment was digging out coals from the underground, where a whole chemistry has been developed from nylons, polyamides, all the way towards specialty polyesters and a lot of polyolefin business. And in 2002, that was the first moment DSM started to divest part of its businesses to other companies that have been agglomerating here on the campus. So it's a very strong historical chemical site here, as there are many in the world, of course. But there's a very special initiative and an eco-atmosphere being created here. And that's why two institutes, like the Institute for Science and Technology at the left-hand side and the Aachen Maastricht Institute for Bio-based Materials at the right-hand side, are two of the example institutes. There are more here on the campus. Two institutes that really focus on bio-based alternatives to make bio-based monomers and to make bio-based materials from them. And as a matter of fact, Maastricht University has put foot on the ground here on the campus and has been cooperating since a few years with all the companies that are here on the site already. As an example, a personal example, also myself, I have been working for 11 years at DSM before, so I'm a part of that incorporation already. This slide is a slide that now triggers me a lot, because I have seen many very expensive and very wise studies about the future and the potential of what is called bio-based building blocks or chemicals. And as you can see, it seems that everything is growing to heaven. The only thing is that these slides, as you see, go back to 2010. I've seen even before. And we are approaching 2020. And what is predicted here, growth of 5–10% per year, is not becoming the truth today. As a matter of fact, if you then ask people of the study which building blocks have so large potential, there is coming an answer that is a little green, but I cannot really see what the answer is. And it is in my belief that you should start to screen to get the answer, because it cannot be true that all the plastics that we use today, which have all been made from the fossil era, starting from coal, oil and gas, that the plastics that have become functional things in our life will be exactly the same as a reality where we claim that we will not derive anything anymore from coal, gas or oil, but make it from totally different natural resources. In that respect, I would be amazed to see that the same plastics will survive in an ultra-ecological reality, industry, society. But to solve that whole question, and then to ask yourself the question, which other plastics might be evolving, you have to set up a series, a concerted R&D chain of different disciplines. Some people on the left that ask themselves, what can we make? Are we making this chemically? Are we making this microbially? Are we combining both expertises to make a building block? Second in row, people that ask themselves, can we polymerize, can we materialize those building blocks into materials? And then later on, people that completely understand what is the functionality of the material that we have made. Should it be tough? Should it be hard? Should it be transparent? What should it fulfill in our daily lives? And finally, of course, the little sentence in the end, will it sell? In other words, will you have track, will you have grip into our current society with those materials? This is a slide that I partially explained to you before. It's a slide with a clear left and a clear right side. The left side, as a matter of fact, the fossils the coal, the oil and the gas, consist of two dominant atoms. It's mainly carbon and hydrogen. It's mainly built up with linear chains and benzene rings, and in coal, gas or oil, there is hardly chirality. I dare to say no chirality. If you look at the right side, and if you claim that you will make all plastics from natural, diverse grasses, trees, hay, straw, whatever, those raw materials are completely different than the fossil ones. So they have two atoms more, nitrogen, oxygen. They have an amazing variety of structures. Look at yourself, right? You have amino acids in your body, you have DNA in your body, you have sugars, you consume sugars. And talking about sugars, chirality simply dominates our life. I guess if you ate the bread in the morning, you had D-glucose in your bread and no L-glucose. And many of us know there's a reason why. Because our body cannot cope with L-glucose. No, our 4 billions of life history has it made as such that we can consume D-glucose. So chirality, the mirror aspect of chemistry in our life, is a key dominant factor in all the resources and all the natural resources around us. So this slide makes very explicit what I gave you already a few slides ago, that there is a wall between the resources we use now for our fossil plastics and the novel resources we want to use for our novel plastics. I don't exclude that there is cross-border lines between both sides, but the logics to think that all plastics of our next generations will be exactly the same as we use now by switching completely our resources seems a very risky claim. Okay, I've said a lot to you, and for me it's very important that you can also connect to what I say here. And as a bio-based materials group at Maastricht University, we think that the social impact that a university, but also a startup company, and then bigger companies can have with end consumers goes via this question: how can you help also? And I also point to myself because I'm also an end consumer, clearly. Well, this is also threefold. I would say, if after this presentation you can think about the world you leave behind for your children in a more educated way, because you might have been triggered by some of the claims and the facts that I have put in the slides, that's potentially a first step. There are many plastic products that are worth a few seconds of consideration on the day. Secondly, this is not a presentation where you should feel dramatic about the situation we are in. No. As an insider in the field, I know that there is dramatic, and I mean that positively, big things to happen, and they make me feel very happy. The most plastics are not yet invented and not yet brought to the broad public yet. So that's why I say feel happy, and also a little bit of urgency about the better alternatives. If you see the very difficult first beginnings of novel plastic products that might be offered in shops around you, consider it and think about, if I now buy those products, what does it mean and how am I contributing to getting this world into a new regime, which our children, in my belief, will really need. And last but not least, try, in one word, to experience plastics. Besides thinking, also touch them and get you familiar with what they are, and try to understand and link that to the feeling and all aspects that you might imagine that can connect you to them. As a last slide, I give you an example of two products in our life that put all what I have said before and the counting on you in also a strange perspective. I take for you a bottle of wine and I take the dashboard of your car as two examples. And I will say what happens in your mind if I talk in a comparison way about these two products in your life. If you talk about the bottle of wine, there is a claim that I always had by my father, this is one of a good year. Well, I've never heard saying anyone that a dashboard was from a good year. That's simply not said. The only thing, if you think about a timeline concerning dashboards, is that it's still in a good shape. Yeah? I dare to show it still. I can still ride with it. The being of a good year is not at all a theme here in the dashboard. Secondly, a wine matures. I've never heard someone saying that your dashboard is maturing. A dashboard, if it changes, can only degrade, isn't it? Thirdly, a wine has something to do with healthy being, pleasure, being together, social, family, something to celebrate. I've never heard that a dashboard would be healthy. In contrast, sometimes if you have the smells of dashboards, the first second you think like, I am not in control. Potentially there is some toxic volatiles coming from my dashboard here. Fourth, the quality of a wine, and this is a kind of a mystery, is not guaranteed, right? If my father opens a bottle of wine, he always smells if the wine has the right consistency and if the cork has not done something wrong with the composition of the wine. If you talk about dashboards, there's no dispute about being wrong or not. This is a dashboard that has been quality controlled. It is my very expensive car. I've paid a lot of money for it. I expect that this is the quality of my dashboard. And last but not least, wine being a product from nature, a dashboard is a product from the catalog. So you see, two products of your daily life have completely different aspects. That's why the question is coming up here, how ready are we in fact for bio-based products? Because apparently we have totally different perceptions of different products in our lives. This might be stuff for psychologists, but at least I wanted to document you that the awareness of our products is of course also very scattered in different perceptions. Before I end, I owe you one conclusion about the strange green thing if I ask which building blocks will make it to block-busting monomers. And that green thing, I know exactly what it is. I've told you before. It's a gamble stone. We at university, but also in startup dynamics, we have to gamble. We have to try out plastics. We have to bring them to people. And the people who can smell, who can understand, who say, yes, Stefan, now I can connect for the first time in my life with this material, they are the feedback that comes back and that can give us the answer. Is this worth to pursue or not? Because in the beginning, everything is an adventure. And you have to make this together with end consumers to make it happen. And for that, you have to gamble a lot. We have to understand from our knowledge-based side what we can make, and you have to try to understand how it can improve your life and what it is worth for you to give a positive feedback. And then this can grow. That's why I conclude with the words, we count on you. Because without end consumers, this cannot happen in my perception. If you would have any questions, any interactions, any concerns, I'm very open to answer them personally with you. You can contact me on this email address and you find us on the Brightlands Camelot campus. We are part of the team of Maastricht University and I thank you for your attention.